Hi, I'm Bill Fitzpatrick. This is The Way of the Action Principles. All right, I have this Jamaican kid. He's 17, but he looks older. He speaks very, very well with his British accent. And he's a master at going into car dealerships and getting test drives and driving out for a mile or so with the salesman and then saying that he drive the car back. Salesman gets out of the car. He slides over on the seat, takes off, leaves the salesman there, and then takes the car to a chop shop. Well, this worked for a while until all of the car dealerships in the area got wise to this young black kid who was very, very slick at getting the car away. Well, he ends up in jail, and because he's in jail, he ends up in my program, and I have to get him a job. So this isn't a kid who's another kid who's not going to take one of my jobs at McDonald's or loading trucks. I mean, forget that, Bill. So I said, Ricky, you got to do something. What kind of a job you want? He says, oh, I want a job selling Jaguars. I said, what are you kidding me? He said, no, I want a job selling Jaguars. It's the only job I'm going to take, Bill. So, save your breath. I'm not taking any, janitor job. No. I want to sell Jaguars. Ricky, come on. So there was one Jaguar dealership in the area. So I got to get Ricky doing something. So we send him to the Jaguar dealership, and he fills out an application, and they say, well, we haven't got any business, we haven't got any openings now, come back in a week. So, he comes back and he tells me this. I said, no, you go back in 2 days and ask him. So he goes back in 2 days, and they say, hey, you were just here. There's no job. Get out of here, So I send him back and back and back, and he goes back like 4 or 5 times, and they keep saying, no, there's no job. How many times have we got to tell you? What are you, stupid? There's no job. So I said, I'm thinking about this thing. So I said, I just happen to have this putty knife on my desk. So I say, take this putty knife, go back to the dealership, and start scraping gum in the parking lot of the dealership. He goes, I'm not doing that, Bill. That's, demeaning. I'm not, I said, no. This is part of our plan. I said, go and do this. So he goes and does that. The next day he comes back, Bill, they came out and they were telling me to get the hell out, and, what are you doing? And I said, all I want is a job. And they said, no, get out. And I said, no, I'm coming back. And they said, well, why are you doing this? What are you, insane? And he says, no, I love Jaguars. I don't want the car tires running over the gum. And, so he does this for 3 or 4 days. Now, what do you think happens? What do you think the end of the story is? Well, the salesman goes in and tells the sales manager, who tells the owner, who comes out, there's this crazy kid in the parking lot scraping gum because he loves Jaguars and he wants a job. You know what happened. They give him a job detailing cars, and he did that for a while. And he wanted a job, a very specific job. He found a way, or we found a way to get him that job, and he got the job. So Ricky was happy for a while. Take what works for you, improve yourself, and help others.